I'm gonna press the button now. Good evening and welcome to a special meeting of the Cupertino City Council. Today is May 5th, 2021. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call?
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Way.
Here.
Councilmember Willie.
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow.
Here.
Mayor Paul.
And I'm here. Tonight, we only have one item on our agenda, and that is to consider our proposed fiscal year 2021 to 2022 city work program items. And I believe that typically we would have our city manager, who has just shown up right on time, introduce the item. And so, Madam City Manager, excellent timing, welcome. And I just introduced our one and only agenda item tonight, which of course is our city work program for the upcoming year, which I think we are all very excited about because we have, at long last, after our, I believe, 66 or 67 year history now, put everything into lockstep. All the commissions, the audit committee, the city council, we've done a lot of laboring or work to get us to this point. And so please kick us off for this evening's discussion.
Yes, I am going to hand the work program item for discussion over to Ms. Katie Nomura, Assistant to the City Manager.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council members. So today we're going to discuss the city work program. So in this flow chart, you can see that we're reviewing the proposed city work program this evening, or proposed items for the city work program. We discussed prioritization for these items at the March 30th and April 12th special meetings. And departments considered priority order of all the items based on the ratings from council members and considered cost and staff bandwidth to recommend the proposed items to you this evening. So just to get right into it, the RENA item is included as it was required by law, the same with the sign ordinance update. I won't read all of these as they were provided to you in your packet, but I will make some notes. You'll see that the priority item number 2, ELI housing, includes Outback Steakhouse location. Revisiting 5G includes the additional requirements that were recommended by council at the last meeting. So additional reporting and gathering of information. Lehigh and Stevens Creek Quarry. This item replaced the noise and pollution monitoring pilot so that the focus for those is no longer just a general pilot, but focusing on noise and pollution monitoring for the quarries. And then for the revamping block leader program, we did revise the scope. It was previously just neighborhood councils, but we revised it to clarify that has a potential for a leadership team with representatives from each community zone. We have 6 response zones in our city. Mental health support, we revised the scope as suggested revisions so that we can fit it all in the work program, and also just to gauge what the need will be and what the demand is in our community, that we would provide a dedicated webpage with resources directing people towards what's available to them, as well as emphasizing mental health programming in our class offerings so we can bring more of these services and classes to Cupertino. And so what we're here for this evening is to take a look at this first pass at putting together the draft after seeing the priority order and the input. If there is an item that did not make it into the proposed list of items, we would love to get that direction and to figure out how we might be able to include it. Just a note that in order to add an item that wasn't originally proposed, we may need additional staff, or another item may need to be removed in order to accommodate the addition. And if input is minimal this evening, we can adopt, or council may adopt, the fiscal year 21-22 city work program. Otherwise, we'll take your direction this evening and return for a formal adoption with your amendments. And again, this is where we are in the process, and that concludes my presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Katie. And to our council, since this is the one and only item on our agenda tonight, I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes in total, and let's see what people have on preliminary questions. It's not an open invitation to go over every single item, of course, but let's make sure that we use judicious timing and allow the public to speak relatively early, but you'll have a total of 10 minutes. I'll go by raised hands with regard to any clarifying questions at this point. Right now I have hands raised in order from Councilmember Moore and then Councilmember Willie. Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. I would like there to be some corrections within the prioritization list if the council members agree to them. One would be priority item 3, revisit 5G. You have item 72 and item 50. Councilmember Way marked item 50. I'd like to know from Councilmember Way if she would be willing to have her item 50 moved to 72, which increases the total to 23 and puts it in the number 1 spot. And there were a couple of other items which had similar overlap. So I would like to just make sure that staff has a chance to go through the list and request that council members move their prioritization numbering if they so choose. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So you're at 9:30. Councilmember Willie.
Could we answer Councilman Moore's question? Mine is kind of partial of that, and that would then kind of lead into the next question.
Oh, of course. Staff, would you like to address Councilmember Moore's comment and question?
Sure. If there are requests to clarify any of the scorings, we can definitely accommodate that. I think that can help clarify the prioritization list. Ultimately, in the end, it would be great to know what items, if any, or if we're okay with items that made it into the proposed or what didn't make it that you would like to move in would be helpful for this evening.
Okay, very good. Anything else from Councilmember Willie?
So I would hope for the beginning we get those corrections made, but I'll go ahead and go. It's a similar, Councilman Moore caught the same question I did. Now, the next question is on the average score. And so if we did look at the 5G, if we were moving the high ones from 64 up to, or from 50 to 72, the 3.6, oh yeah, this is what Councilman Moore said, it actually moves it all the way up to a 4.6. The question I've got is, when there were more than one item dealing with something like that, you know, when I went and looked at another one that was similar, for instance, the use of plastics, you know, so one of us, 61, had 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, and then it also had, on number 19, had 5, 3, 3, 3, 3. And so staff then took the 61 line, which counts out to 42. And so if they did that same thing with the 5G, it would go, as Moore says, to 4.6. Now, when I go over and I look at line 6 and line 7, the homeless jobs program versus the plan to end homelessness. So staff has given them both a 3.4. If you look at number 68, which is the plan to end homelessness, with the job program being part of it, you know, it's 53153, comes out to 3.4 with a budget of 500,000 versus line 33, which only had Councilman Way. And so staff has now broken them out. And so I tend to think that, you know, it kind of belongs all together. And so that, for the first cut, that's my questions there, that some clarification so that now that we go and look into our ranking and allocations and stuff, we truly do have a correct update.
Right. And so I will say that this is very challenging. because certain items didn't receive direct number scores from everyone, which made it hard. Well, how do I average a score that says this item replaces this other item? It was very challenging. So I will say that, just maybe give it that caveat. We did our best with what we had. I think in some cases where an item did get rated, we left those ratings alone only because I didn't want to presume that, you know, maybe they would apply that 5 to the same item because it's replacing it. I didn't want to do anything that would be on the council members' behalf without them directing that. So that's why you're seeing some of that. And that's also why in the kind of new items that we have that were kind of either hybrids or split outs of the existing ones, we didn't put what council members scored them because I didn't want to presume what they would have been ranked. So that kind of, hopefully that kind of explains why they're the way that they are. But again, if you would like to clarify some of the scores, we're happy to do that this evening. But I think I can understand the desire to do that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the items that were ranked very highly made it into the work program. There are some that maybe didn't, and that we're hoping to discuss this evening if it's council's desire to add them in, and then we can discuss, you know, what might that look like, what might that trade-off be, and then we can move from there. But ultimately, our goal out of tonight's meeting is not so much to get a finalized priority list per se, because next year we're probably going to go through this process again, have another prioritized list. Ultimately, we want to know is what is being proposed in the work program inclusive of what council was hoping for.
Yeah, I just want to kind of clarify based on what your comments were. So as I understood the instruction, you know, 0 was a valid number. If we felt that something really is not of current importance to the community, to give it a number 1, 2, 3, or 5 didn't seem appropriate if we really don't changing the seal of the city, perhaps. And so when you take the average, you know, I thought it was pretty explanatory. If you had 3 zeros and a 3 and a 2, then you take 5, 3 plus 2 is 5, divided by 5 councilmen, and you wind up with an average of 1. So to me, there's no ambiguity if items had a 0 or blank. So I'll leave it at
Right, so
that.
the ones with ambiguity weren't blank though. They had like notes that would refer to other items. So it made it a little challenging and I didn't want to presume. And so that, but either way, those items still, I feel, land kind of in tier with how they may have landed, even if we did an exercise where we put in, what if we replace that number? They landed very closely in the same places. So we thought that this was a relatively safe method to go.
So I think that's real good that now I kind of know how this updated list came in. I would just say that I hope Mayor doesn't take, you know, staff's answers as part of my 10 minutes. Because tonight I think we need maximum time.
Oh, no, okay, well, let me speak to that and stop your clock. I am, but I'll be fairly liberal about adding more time, just for consistency, right? Because I've always been keeping staff time in answering questions as part of the total elapsed time, right? Because otherwise we really don't have any kind of sunset for, you know, potential duration of allocations of time. All right, Vice Mayor Chow, you have your hand up.
So are we just asking questions or are we also commenting on things that I'd like to be clarified or rephrased?
I would prefer that you ask questions, although clarifications are certainly part of the question process. But I'd like to keep it to questions at this point so that we go to the members of the public after this before we bring it back for a motion and deliberation.
Okay, so I'd like to know some items that are on, for example, item 9, that's average 3.2, but it's not included. I hope the staff give an answer on why some of the higher ranking numbers are not included. So that's one. And then I see that there is consider new commission and committee, but then I see that there is the environmental review committee roles and the fine arts committee name change. I And then there is another Economic Development Committee. There are actually 4 similar items. How come they are not grouped together? My reason is I don't think we want to put, for example, Fine Art Committee name change as an item, because before we even decide we want to make that change, the staff will be spending time to prepare all the documents to put it on the agenda. But we should consider everything together. Do we need role clarification on any commission? Do we need to form new ones? Do we need a name change on any of them so that their scope is clearer? That should be considered together. Then we give direction to staff on which ones to work on. So I hope that's combined. And then for question, also like number 31 is also not included. I think that's, sorry. So number 21 is not included. Number 30 and 31 and 33 are all not included. They are relatively higher in ranking, so I would like to understand why. And then, yeah, there are numbers. The others are lower ranking, but then, for example, number 40, 43, they are lower ranking, but then there are other lower ranking items that were included. So I would like to know
Right.
why they were not. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, if I may I answer?
Sure, please.
Great. So I'm going to try to hit all of those points. Number 9 was called out in the staff report. That was the item related to domestic violence, the domestic violence shelter. It is going to be handled operationally, and that was described in the report. So it is happening. Also in the report, you'll notice some of these items that were labeled as operational. They're not in this priority rating since they didn't receive a ranking, and they're considered operational and will be worked on. To answer your question, I feel like I'm missing one of them, but to get to how some items, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, the domestic violence is looking for a site. Why would that be considered operational?
So we do have a program for that. We do have funding that can be used for that purpose, and it will be, we will be looking for something that works. I don't know if we have Carrie Huesler or Ben Fu with us this evening to speak more to that. There are some sensitivities around this. I just want to be really careful.
Okay, so then which ones, how do I find out whether an item is included operationally with a different scope and not?
So I think it might be attachment C, we did include the operational items. Item 9 is included in attachment A, which is the all list of the prioritized items. We didn't want to move, we wanted to show that it did get prioritized and it is highly rated. We didn't want it to seem as though we were hiding that. So it is there, but it just isn't in the proposed because we're handling that in operations.
Okay, so what I mean is all the not included items are in attachment A.
Yes.
I would not possibly look for them for every one of them in attachment C, right? So is there any marking on attachment A so that I know any of them? Or maybe you can just give me a list. Which ones are included?
Yeah, so in attachment A, under the priority number, we have in parentheses included or not included. So you can easily tell which ones made it in and which ones are not currently being proposed. But again, that's why we're here this evening to kind of hear that feedback.
No. Item number 9 is labeled not included, but you are telling me it's included operationally.
Yes, so when we say not included, I mean not included in the proposed published work program.
So
Number 9 is a little weird, and I apologize for that.
My question is, how do I tell among the many not included items I just listed?
So item 9 is the only one that is not included and is being handled operationally.
Oh, so
Sorry
only
about that.
number 9 is handled in operation. The rest are not included.
Right, number 9 is a little special, yeah.
Could you provide reasons for them not being included?
Okay, now I need Carrie and Ben to come back. Sorry.
So,
about
Vice Mayor Chow, did you read the short report I sent to council yesterday on that item?
The domestic violence?
Correct.
I probably didn't get to that.
Okay, well, it's in there and it's,
It's fine.
it's confidentiality related.
Yeah, I suspected that. Okay, yeah. I think I brought that up last time that, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, you're at 333, Vice Mayor Chow.
Wait, the other items, why are they not?
Right, and so unfortunately, not all staff are equipped to work on all items, and so it's really based on the work group that takes on certain items. And so that's why some lower ranking items were able to make it in while some higher didn't, because it just depended on which staff were required to work on this. So if those staff were already fully booked with higher rated work program items, the later ones may not have made it in, but another group that maybe their items were lower ranked, those ones made it in because they were able to have the bandwidth to work on them.
So in other words, when we looked at council's list of work program items, we then take them and separate them by department because each department's a different size and those are the skill sets you would need to work on certain things. And that's the time constraint that you have. And then we reconstitute the list.
Okay, can you just quickly tell me? So number 21, affordable housing strategy. The reason is staffing issue?
Right, there's not enough staff bandwidth, but with an additional planner, we believe we can take on that item. So that's what the feedback that we want to hear this evening. So if we do,
That's important. The council should allocate additional funding for planner.
correct. Oh, and I do recall your other question. So considering new commissions is more, the way that it was described is kind of an exploratory exercise, figure out, well, what are the things we even want to pursue? And so in terms of new commissions, so that's an item. The other items were identified as we want to revise the scope of this, or we want to do a specific weenie code change that's already been identified. So those were scoped and sized for those efforts. The new commissions item will result in items possibly that have a new scope of a commission or weenie code being developed. But in and of itself, it's kind of an exploratory, let's review and let's discuss what we might want to be adding. And so that's why they're not together. And also different work groups will be working on those various items depending on which department it falls under.
Number 30, Rancho Rinconada. We received that 3 score from 3 council members, which is the majority. And that's not included.
Sorry, I got kicked out of the meeting momentarily. What was the question?
Number 30, Rancho Rinconada. It got 3 points out of 3 council members. That's a majority, putting it at 3 points. So why is it not included?
So from my understanding, it has to do with, again, staff bandwidth and there being many other higher rated items for that work group. But if Joanne Magrini, our Director of Parks and Recreation, has anything to add, we can have that
Staff prefers traffic garden, even though you have that required staff.
So traffic garden would be in public works.
3 seconds.
Okay. And then next is the 31 residential engagement activity. It says that there is a monthly town hall every month right now that we are not utilizing. So the staff is not recommending this one. Are we saying that next year we can still do a monthly town hall? That's already
Correct. We're saying that we have a vehicle already for this, and given it didn't make it in because of staff bandwidth constraints, but we also wanted to point out
Okay,
that
that's time.
it could be accommodated.
So let me give an opportunity to Council Members Wei and Council Member Moore, I think, asked a brief question at the beginning, and then I haven't asked questions, but I think I'll defer my time to commentary after public comment. Councilmember Wade, did you want to ask any clarifying questions?
Yes, I just want to know when I did 5G on 50, and Councilmember Moore said there was a 70. What's the difference between the two?
So and we still listed both just so you could see what the difference was. The original 5G that you put a 5 on had the original scope.
Right.
The other 71 had an additional paragraph added to it. Let me find it.
What's the additional? There must be a reason why I didn't put on that one. Maybe
Let me get it. So it says staff is to report all resident concerns on a resident concern record, add street image for 5G cell location, and fill out the questionnaire. Meet with cell providers monthly on an or as needed based on additional resident concerns. Record and then report back to City Council. Staff is to continue to update the city manager's spreadsheet of updated status of nearby cities' 5G cells in residential
I got
areas.
it. Thank you, Katie. I did not rate that because I don't think a spreadsheet is, I think it's too much staff work. If we could just do a digitize something, so I did not vote for it because of the addition. So I voted for the original one without the addition. Because I'm considering staff time. I think we have a lot of on the city work program. I even think just what we have will be difficult for the staff to finish in 21, 22. But of course, we can always move it because we have something we don't finish 2021. So I'm trying to get into the down so the staff is workable, that they can work on multi-project. So I don't think this the spreadsheet or I just think it's too redundant. If the staff can just have somewhere just to, lock in the responses, that should be good enough. And I do want to make it, it's question. I don't have questions, I have comments. I'm good with Mayor Paul.
Okay, great. You're exactly at 8 minutes. And so, like I said, I'll defer my commentary to after public comment. And so we'll go to the public at this point. I do see Councilmember Moore just raised her hand. And Councilmember Moore, since you have so much time left, let's go to you for.
Well, Mayor Paul, it's actually a procedural question. So because I have so much time, if I don't use it now, do I then get to use it later? And I'm also kind of wondering how it is that this procedure was arrived at and why the council as a whole didn't have a discussion about what procedure we would be following. Because I hear the vice mayor, has a lot of questions, and I feel as though her time has been cut short, and it sounds as though she went very thoroughly through the whole packet. So I hate to feel as though the vice mayor didn't get a chance to ask all of her questions before going to the public. And then there's that. Also, I was looking at the city of, and I don't know how to pronounce it, the city of Goleta, and how they do their city work program. And what I think is interesting, and it's a cityofgoleta.org, they have work programs by department, such as the city manager's office, finance, library department, neighborhood services and public safety, then planning and environmental review, and then public works. And I thought that was kind of interesting, and it looks to me as though this particular city has the departments a little bit more in charge of this process than what we're doing here. And so I am concerned what best practices are for other cities and how the work program process dovetails into public works and then CIP, because it's my understanding that how other cities do it might be that way. So I would like to know what's going on in the cities around us. And I understand we can do kind of a hybrid, of course, but it seems to me that going from the departments and then public works being one of those departments, and that department has the CIP, it seems like that's the order. So I'm just, I'd like to know more about that. And honestly, I think we might benefit from having a study session on work programs and CIPs just in general to understand the process, so that the confusion all goes away. And I know that this process has been improving, but I think that with more knowledge and collective work, we can make it even better.
Great. So to speak to your suggestion of looking at City of Goleta, I think what they do sounds like a great idea. So what we have is, like you mentioned, it's a little bit of a hybrid because we want that council direction, we want the council goals, but ultimately the departments, which is what we did in kind of this step that we're coming back with this evening, is the departments have to look at that and see, well, what can we do? And so that's what's being proposed this evening. We can look into I can reach out to them and see how they do it in their city and maybe get some more best practices. We have looked into work program processes in Santa Clara County, and many cities are in our same boat. It's a very similar process. Other cities, they have very loose work programs that are not kind of held to every year very strictly. And so there's a lot more flexibility there. It just depends on the nature of what the expectation is out of that work program, I think, that dictates how it's formulated. But yeah, we can look into potentially having maybe more study sessions on these processes. The other thing I did want to mention is the reason why we've always tried to keep CIP projects out of the work program is because they do go through the CIP process. And putting them in both makes this very muddy and difficult, and trying to tie them both together. That's why we've always recommended, we think CIP should stay in the CIP process, so it's much cleaner. And even to that end, we're thinking maybe we kind of have this idea generating maybe from council a little earlier in the year, so that then the ideas can be siphoned off into the correct process.
Okay, thank you, Katie. And may I ask, has there been historically some level of frustration from staff over this process that we're doing? And do you have some suggestions that you have for us for our next round that we would do this, or maybe we finish up and then we get some sort of brainstorming comments about how we can make things better?
Yeah, that sounds great. We can definitely work together to get some feedback from how this process has gone and to improve in future years.
Great, I'll stop your timer, and I want to speak to your initial comment, Councilmember Moore. Given the fact that I am tasked with running this meeting, I'm completely open to any suggestions that you might have with regard to how to keep the timing and keep the fairness level equitable. But with regard to being able to have a finite amount of time, I think it's fairly evident that it's necessary to have some kind of mechanism. So that's the one that I've decided to employ. If you have questions about it, it's certainly something that it's well within your right to inquire regarding. I would be more open to entertaining suggestions as to how to handle it, because my initial allocation was 10 minutes to everyone, and there was an exhaustion of that 10 minutes by Vice Mayor Chow. And so I don't mean to limit anybody in terms of their questions, but I will note that setting a limit does tend to make people be a little bit more concise and brief. And there is the fairness aspect of it as well. So if you have practical alternatives, I'm happy to entertain them. And if you feel like it's not an effective manner in which I've been conducting the meetings, that's within your prerogative to have somebody else conduct them. And you'll need to unmute.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I guess part of the question also is with regards to, perhaps it's within Rosenberg's rules, are if a council member doesn't have enough time to get their questions answered, is there some basis that for argument that more time should be allocated? I understand you have members of the public that complain that meetings run long. However, do we have some, perhaps the city attorney could weigh in if we have some basis to request more time?
Through the chair, would you like me to respond to that? Or?
Well, please feel free to speak to it. However, I'm not taking personal umbrage at it, but I feel that you have a balance between consideration to the public and a limited amount of time to do a reasonable amount of business. And so with regard, because the comments have been consistent throughout the last several meetings coming from Councilmember Moore with regard to saying we need more time. And I felt that at the very beginning of this particular section, I stated if people need more time, I will add more time. I'll be liberal with regard to the allocation of time. So I'm not really sure where the concern is arising. But again, I would be happy to step aside. This is not some kind of, exercise in glory. And so if there's a better way to do it, great, please suggest it. If there's a better person to do it, great. I'm happy to participate in such a system. And Madam City Attorney, if you'd like to speak to it, please feel free.
I mean, I was just going to say that the time that more debate could happen is right before the vote, because council members are allowed to have debate on a vote before it's taken. And if anyone wants to end debate at that time and call the question, there's a procedure to do that by supermajority vote. So, but anytime before that, I think the chair is running the meeting and can organize the efficiency of it with the agreement with his colleagues that that's a good process to keep us on track, which then might be a good segue to bring us back to the work program item here.
All right, well, thank you, Madam City Attorney. Vice Mayor Chow, I do see you have your hand raised.
Commenting on this issue right now, I actually like Mayor Paul's current policy, even though my questions are not all answered, but all other 4 council members has the option to yield their time to me. I think if anyone is willing to yield time to listen to the staff answer, it's better than I am dominating the time, because then that means people value the question and want answer. We at least have 2 council members who want to hear the answer. Then I think that's a more cordial process. So I actually like the current method. So if any of you would like to yield your time to listen to the answers, feel free to do so. Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. Frankly, I'm happy to yield the rest of my time and my term, because, at the end of the day, I'm just trying to keep this meeting in order and have a good community discussion. Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, so I think it's good to give a little narrative. Having this be the 3rd one that I've been to, I do think this is dramatically improved over the previous 2. But I would say that I think documenting the process as we have gone would have been good. What the rules were going to be for staff in updating the work plan list, and then having staff provide the answers for adjustments so that we can, at some point in hopefully 2 or 3 or 5 minutes, we can say, okay, all the so-called updates are now rolled into this table. Councilman Way had said the reason why her 5G, and so, okay, yep, I understand that should not be rolled in. So again, the list that we have with all the updates, I did want to make one, I did rethink the online store that I was not inclined to support, and I have an additional 3, and so I would put that for that. That being said, I'm happy with how everything seems to be ranked. I'm a little confused. We have 2 items for homeless that I think staff could tell us an advantage to keeping them separate or combining it. And maybe it does make sense. It just kind of seems from a number standpoint to not be quite right when we say both parts have a 4.2, and maybe that makes sense. I mean, maybe that's the best we can do at this first attempt of this new process. And so with that being said, I guess I'm okay with keeping them separate, keeping them at 4.2s, and saying, let's move on to now doing whatever we're going to do with the work plan and supporting it and blessing it. So, but great improvement. I hope you will continue to do the range. We really don't want any confusion after this process has already been started. You've got a well thought out plan, and I think we need to, for this year, stick with it and then make the comments so that next year we can do better.
Thank you, Councilmember Willie. Councilmember Moore, you have your hand up.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. So if I have any time left, I'd like to yield it to the Vice Mayor, but it's my understanding that from the City Attorney that once we have finished the public comment section and it comes back, we are free to ask as many questions as we need to in order to properly understand the topic at hand.
That wasn't my understanding of the commentary. I really, frankly, I don't know what the problem is with regard to trying to keep the meeting structured and within reasonable time limits. Vice Mayor Chow has stated that she doesn't mind the constraints, but with regard to being able to ask questions in an efficient manner, I'd like to try to encourage that going forward. But we are at a point right now where we can go ahead and ask questions again. I've never prevented people from asking questions when we conclude with our public commentary, and so that's what I'm going to do now. I'll be moving to the public commentary and then we'll come back. I will ask for a motion because that is listed in our agendas as to what the ordering of procedure is. First, we have the presentations, and then we have clarifying questions. We go to the public, and then we come back for a motion for further discussion or questions. And so that, I think, has been very clear from the outset. We have a hand raised from the public from Jennifer Griffin, and I've been adhering to a practice of if a member of the public has their hand raised before the end of the first commentary, then they will be called upon. And so you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor Darcy. You guys have worked so hard on this. I mean, we have done this thing in hotels, in rooms. I mean, this is an ongoing, evolving drama that happens each year, every couple of quarters. And the city always does a really good job with it. Of course, we have to remember that this is during COVID and we have our wonderful Zoom. It won't always be like this. In fact, I think that we should be eventually. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know what to do. Sorry. And I have survived my COVID shot. My arm's sore, but I did it. Anyway, yes, I think that even by the time that you all start going through this again, it's probably time to start thinking about, can we go back into the council chambers again? I mean, I don't know if you guys have had that discussion, but I think that this type of thing, we are having to obviously do things like this that we normally did in the council chambers or we did in hotels with big overcraft. In Quinlan and the hotel where they took a huge overhead projector piece and wrote all 50 or 100 items down. I think the upshot of this is that eventually we will be back in the council chambers. This is not the way that it will always be. We don't have to reinvent how we do these types of meetings. The protocol will be, we will be back in the council chambers. That is, I don't know if you guys have addressed that yet. It's probably a bit premature, but I know it's difficult, but being in the audience, I can see you all struggling with this. This is an outset of the COVID, of having to be in Zoom land. And this type of thing is difficult, but I'm sure that we'll be back in the chambers eventually, and it's not going to be, you guys aren't going to have to come up with completely new protocol. Thank you so much for getting everything on the listing of everything. It is difficult sometimes to follow because, we're having to increase the size of the spreadsheet, et cetera. But you guys are doing a really great job. We're very proud of you. So keep up the good work. Staff, thank you so much for putting up with everybody. Eventually, we'll be back in chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Our next speaker is Connie Cunningham, and Connie is actually the only other member of the public with a hand raised. And so welcome, Connie. You'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I'm pleased to speak with you this evening. I was happy to review the prioritizations that have been established, and very pleased to see that item 2 is the extremely low income housing for intellectually developmentally disabled, also the Outback Steakhouse, and then moderate income housing. They are so important in our city because we do not have those kinds of housing at this time. Excuse me. Then items 6 and 7 for homelessness. As we all know, that is an increasing problem. And for us to be able to help our citizens with their issues with suffering, homelessness, and poverty in our rich area is very heartening. And I'm just very happy to see those items included in tonight's prioritization list. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Connie. And we'll bring it back to council at this point. Purely for the sake of discussion and further questions, I would like to ask for a motion. And so if your hand is up to simply ask questions or make commentary, I ask that you put it down to see if anybody is willing to make a motion at this point. All right, Councilmember Moore, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. I move that we approve the fiscal year 2021-2022 city work program items per attachment A.
All right, and so any
So just a clarification, the proposed ones are in attachment B.
Pardon, per attachment B. Thank you.
Okay, so Councilmember Moore has made the motion, and I see Councilmember Willie, you have your hand raised. Would you like to second?
I will second it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. I'll give you your time allocations now. And let me just say, I realize this seems sometimes antithetical to values of freedom. Putting people on a timer-like shackle, but ultimately this is about ushering through a fair and efficacious process. And I guess we could just kind of go by feel, but I just think that this is the most fair and objective way to do it. I have 10 minutes, but I will cede 5 of those minutes over to Vice Mayor Chow. Councilmember Moore has about 5. Councilmember Way has 8, and Councilmember Willie has 2. And again, like I said at the outset, I'm going to be very liberal about applying extra time. It's only 7:17 right now. This, after all, is our work plan. It's a work in progress, just like everything else. And I think we all take the very thoughtful suggestions as they are, which is with the grain of salt that we think that, we can take them and try to improve the process along the way. So we have a motion on the table. I don't see any hands raised at this time, but let me go ahead and readjust some of these times. And if there are any people that would like to start us off, Vice Mayor Chow, I see your hand is raised. Please feel free. And you'll need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. So I'll first comment on the revision that I'd like to see. But first, thanks staff. I think this is really wonderfully organized. We have never had such spent so much time on the work program. It's just great. And then once again, I think mayor's rule actually complies with Roberts and Rosenberg's rule, because it's similar to the call for question. If it needs a majority of council vote, which means any one council member should not try to continue the discussion. So if my questions were not supported by a second council member, then I should drop the question. I think that's fine. But then which means if anyone would be willing to yield the time to me, or anyone who has extra question, that means we at least have 2 council members. Then that means we should be continuing the deliberation. So I think it makes good sense. I think restrictions a lot of times make us improve ourselves. So I like it. So first, my comment is number 10. The consider new commission and committee. I hope that we can include, right now the wording reads, consider new commission. I think the intention originally was to revisit the roles of the existing commission and committee, and then consider possible new commissions. So we are not just saying we want new. I think maybe Library Commission could consider to expand its scope to include the community engagement, or potentially Back and Ped could expand its role to include multimodal transportation, things like that. So it may not be new, but just a rescope. Okay. And next one is oh, wait. Where's my? Sorry, I think. Yeah, and then also I think the Fine Art Commission renaming and the Economic Development Committee and the environmental review should all be considered as one item. Let's get council direction first before moving ahead with any of those. And okay, so number 16, that's regarding the encouragement of dark sky compliance. I would like to clarify that other organizations should include the school sites, like school parking lot. So I want to be sure that we don't forget that. And okay, number 15, which is the revamping of block leader and neighborhood watch program. I think when I first proposed that, I wasn't thinking to have the existing block leaders sitting on this potentially six zones of neighborhood councils, because as I understand, only about 10% of existing block leaders are actively involved. And I've heard of some people who are designated as block leaders, but then they don't do anything, but then they are blocking other people from becoming one. So maybe we should get everyone to reapply. So we have a new neighborhood council, and then maybe we want to establish a term limit or election process for the block leaders. Mm-hmm. So it may or may not be block leaders. I don't know. Let's talk about it. So that's my comment. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow. We have a hand up from Councilmember Wei.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I'd like to add on to Vice Mayor Chow's points, and I think it's really good to combine 10, 34, 38, 44 of all the commissions, just reevaluate current commissions and consider new commissions and committees. I think that's a good, doesn't mean I want to add more items. I just think these are good to have a good overlook of existing committees, maybe revise them, and then think about adding new committees or commissions. I think that's a good suggestion. Okay. And I have a question on number 42, traffic garden. It is in our CIP plan. And I remember our discussion again with Vice Mayor Chow's point is, and also I have concerns about location and to spend $75,000 to do a study, and then maybe the whole thing build is less than $150,000. I really think this should go back to the CIP plan and not in the work plan, because we need to revisit that. That I have an issue with this traffic garden in the work plan. That's what I have currently. Thank you, Mayor Paul.
Thank you, Councilmember Wei. I don't see another hand raised at this point. I'll go ahead and make my initial comments. I have two items that I'd like to address. The first is the Mayor's Cup. I thank my fellow council members for rating it so highly. I also thank Councilmember Willie for taking a look at the Cupertino store. In the interest of full disclosure, I did speak with Councilmember Willie about this item and stated that I don't see it as intrinsically tied to the re-envisioning of our city seal. And so I thank you for the open-mindedness with regard to being able to move forward an opportunity for the public and for visitors in particular to be able to visit Cupertino and support our local community and economy. My request is to consider a budgetary allocation for this initiative. And my request is going to be $100,000 because I believe that this is an opportunity as well to interface with our business community and include within the Mayor's Cup item, this particular item of a Cupertino store. This might seem very counterintuitive, but the reason that it, I think, fits nicely is that one of the staffers of the Chamber of Commerce recently reached out to me and stated that the area of their building that they rent out is actually available at this point. And so they were interested in knowing whether there would be an appetite for a partnership between the city and our Chamber of Commerce. And I saw that as an opportunity to really, I think, amplify the respective roles and, frankly, really help the business community, help the retail community, and situate our city and the chamber and business in a really positive manner, kind of an outward facing. And so what I see that space as being potentially usable for is, once we revamp it and enter into a partnership, having some of that physical space available for the actual items that we would have for sale, some of those on our online store. I think that we could recruit student internships to work there, but there's also this potential intersectionality with the Mayor's Cup, because ultimately this comes, and I give credit where credit is due. Our vice mayor had suggested incubation space earlier. And I think when we're looking at public incubation space, the idea of the Mayor's Cup initiative is precisely that. It's trying to incubate an idea and really examine it from a number of different perspectives. And I think that if we have one space available and there is the ability for students and internships to intersect with the idea of vetting it with various facets of the community, I think this is a project site, if you will, that is full of future opportunity. So I would like to ask for that budgetary item. I have 2 minutes left, so I'll go ahead and introduce my other item. Now this is much more different, and I apologize for not introducing it earlier, but I want to be able to put the idea out there. This has been a completely singular year. And so I think that if we're looking at how we emerge from the pandemic, I would like to be able to see whether there is an appetite within the community, within the council, to have a particular program. I'm calling it the Pandemic Re-Emergence Program. And my idea is that we can trigger outreach through council, and we can trigger outreach through our commissions, and we ask them to apply with respect to their specific charters, and we put some budget on it, and we basically give back to the community and say, within these various contexts that you operate in, within the commissions, within the city council, what are the appetites within the community to think about ways that we reemerge from the pandemic? I came up with a one-pager on this, so I'm going to go ahead and share that very briefly here. If I can find it. Okay, I'll go ahead. Okay, and so help me out here if you are looking at a proposal. Does it say Cupertino Prep on the top of your screen here?
Yes.
Great. And description: as Cupertino's residents begin to re-engage with our community and the larger community, City Council will consider and support efforts to do so safely and successfully. I'm at my time. I'm wondering if anyone will cede to me 1 minute.
I will give it to you, Mayor Paul.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Way, much appreciated. To that end, an allocation of funding for the event with the greatest annual participation and turnout, the 4th of July celebration is re-envisioned in a safer context instead of using fireworks with modern drone technology. In addition, through public outreach with Cupertino's 10 volunteer resident commissions, the commissions will consider and support community-based re-emergence efforts. Estimated allocations are $200,000 for the drone show, $50,000 for council allocations, and $25,000 each for each of our 10 commissions. Staff time, the idea is to minimize that because I would like this to be council and commission driven, but invariably, it would be good to allocate in order to, get this done well. Total budget allocation, 500,000. Staff time allocation, 120 hours, with 20 hours to council and 10 hours each from the commissions. This is just an idea, and I realize that July 4th is only 2 months away. The city manager indicated there might be procurement issues with regard to the drone show, and so I would just like to plant the seed of the idea. And if you find it compelling, great. And if it's compelling enough to allocate with the understanding that, hey, this might not happen for a year, then I think we can start a great conversation. All right, thanks very much. I'll go with the next hand at this point. And we have one from Councilmember Willie.
I think Mayor Paul has been very eloquent and very forward thinking, and I appreciate it, and I support it, fully support it. So I believe it should be high on our list at this point. Thank you.
No, thank you, Councilmember Willie. Any other hands? Okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in a substitute motion. I would like to have staff go back, and I don't think it's necessary to well, we can go by votes in terms of whether there is sufficient amounts of support to add what I was suggesting, as well as the combination of the Cupertino store with the Mayor's Cup initiative, as well as I'd like to incorporate the comments made by council members Chow and Wei with regard to an omnibus committees and commissions item. I think that's a really good idea. I don't think we need to effectuate every single one of the suggestions, but at least to evaluate them and get some recommendations going forward. So for instance, for my own part, my suggestion was to try to set forth a charter for the Economic Development Committee as well as the Fiscal Strategic Committee. I think anything having to do with committees and commissions can be rolled into one item on a future agenda as an initial step. So that would be my substitute motion, which is the recommendation per attachment B with those buckets of changes. And Vice Mayor Chow, you are sharing a screen, but you don't have your hand up, and Councilmember Moore does have her hand up. But let me ask for a second. Is there a second for my substitute motion?
Second.
Okay, and I apologize. Councilmember Moore, did you have your hand up for the purpose of attempting to second the motion?
No, Mayor Paul, I was trying to clarify what your item was.
Okay, so we do have the motion, the substitute motions on the table. And Councilmember Moore, you had a question with regard to it?
Yes, so, right. So if I understand correctly, you are taking your single-use plastics ordinance and the Mayor's Cup Challenge event, and you are adding $100,000 for a store that would be at the Chamber of Commerce location staffed by students. Is that correct? And then you want $500,000 more for the pandemic Re-Emergence program, with $200,000 for something called a drone show, which I don't know what that means. And then you want money to go to each commission, and I don't understand what that money is supposed to be for. I'm concerned that you have an economic development vision there. It sounds like a post-COVID economic development vision. And it brings up the issue of what is our Economic Development Committee doing and our Economic Development Director, and what would be the interaction between them. So I have a lot of questions there. The total amount of money looks like $700,000, if I'm understanding this correctly. And then also, because we went to public comment and we're coming back, we've had this problem happen before, where members of the public felt that they couldn't comment on an item because it got altered so greatly after the public comment closed. So I'm concerned that we aren't allowing the public to weigh in on this. And it sounds like the drone show would be replacing what we historically had as a fireworks show. And I would want to know what the public has to say about that as well. And if there's any concern about having a store at the Chamber of Commerce location, given that some small businesses don't have the money to pay the dues to belong to the Chamber of Commerce, and will there be feelings about this? And anyway, I have a lot of questions about it. Unfortunately, because it's a new item, your time has ended. I would say restart the clock. I'd like some public comment, and I'd like to have it clarified. It sounds very interesting, though. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying I don't understand it. Thank you.
Yeah, let me, do you mind if I speak to that within your time, since it was basically directed at me?
I certainly appreciate the irony of that. And yes, you may have my time.
Okay, well, I'm just, you have the floor. This is your time, but I won't dilly-dally on it. Yes, absolutely, this needs to be publicly vetted. And so, no, I would not be asking for an approval of a work plan. I would be asking for a modification of what we're describing to come back to us for a final approval. And so I would expect at that council meeting, at the following council meeting, once staff has consolidated and integrated the comments, that we would have the opportunity to get the vetting from the public. I think that's the most important point, because that, of course, has to do with the public input process. And so as to the other points you make, no, I'm not re-envisioning the economic development director position, but I do think that this is an opportunity for us to interface with the business community, and particularly this specific organization, in an outward-facing manner, in an affirmative manner, and in a way that really kind of promotes our city. When I think about people going over to this location, I think about people going, right into the same building and going, hey, where can I go eat? Where can I go have retail in Cupertino, or have a shopping experience? And I think that really intersects nicely. As for whether it would actually be staffed only by students, no, I do not envision that. I think the city needs to have a stake. Of course, this is going to be in space that's part of the chamber building. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you very much.
Is there any time still left on that? Because what you just described is somewhat like a visitor center, which sounds like we don't have one. Maybe there is a place for that, and I think that's very interesting. I really appreciate that you're saying that you want it to go to the public and have public comment about it, and I can certainly support that. The one ask that I did have in the list, which didn't get a lot of support, was with regards to Stockelmeyer House. So you have a very large cash ask here, and I'm concerned about just from a structural standpoint. I would like to hear some kind of inspection comments about that particular building, because I don't want to see it continue to degrade and fall into ruin and end up being something that's very expensive to take care of down the road because of neglect. And it is in kind of a damp area there, so I'm concerned about that. If nobody wants to do any interior work on it at this point, maybe there's an appetite down the road for it, but I don't want to see the exterior structure and foundation rot away on that building from neglect. So I would like a staff, if somebody that's been out there, to say, you know, it's okay to leave it alone for another 2 years, it's going to be all right, or no, it's getting infested with rats, it's got wood rot happening, we are sorely neglecting the structure. So I'd like to know something about that. Maybe at the next meeting when your item comes forward, just some kind of update on the structure would be good.
I'm happy to incorporate that request for information into the motion. And so, Councilmember Willie, would you be willing to second that as an addition to the motion, the substitute motion?
Yes, I would.
Okay. With regard to Stockermeyer, some information. I know we have it. I was on the Parks and Recreation Commission from 2007 to 2014, and that was actually one of the big projects that we had evaluated. I don't know if we've done formal assessment since that period of time, but that would be good information to have. So I see 2 hands up. Vice Mayor Chow, you have about a minute left. Councilmember Way, 6, and Councilmember Willie, approximately 2. And so let's go with Vice Mayor Chow, and then Councilmember Willie, Councilmember Way.
I raised my hand earlier, just intend to share the amendments that I mentioned earlier. I typed up here. Mostly the same, but I'd like to clarify item 26. I said to include school sites, and I would like to add encourage compliance by existing residential and commercial property and organization, including school sites. It's encouragement, but we have residents complain that their neighbors' light is too bright, and so this is a chance to encourage compliance. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So okay, and your timing is good because that's the time. So can you put that back up, please, Vice Mayor Chow? Because I'm going to go ahead and incorporate this into some edits to the motion, some amendments to the motion. Item 15, I'd like to incorporate what you have up there, as well as item 26 into the substitute motion. And item 10, I consider it already requested in the original substitute motion. And so, Councilmember Willie, would you be willing to modify the motion in accordance to what's on the screen for items 15 and 26?
Yes, I modify my second.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Councilmember Willie, your hand is up next, followed by Councilmember Way.
First one I'll touch on is, the additional money for the emerging out of the pandemic. I see that we have the finance director online, and I'm always interested in the fact that we have a council and commissions budget. Last year, I believe it was $950,000. I'd like to ask the finance director, typically, what is left over at the end of the year, because whatever typically is being left over would be a good starting point for the seed money for that. And is it possible to ask her? The second one, I would like that question, but I didn't want to catch this other one. I want to share my screen for a minute. When Councilman Paul brought up a drone show, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
And so I didn't know what it was. So just tonight, I just typed it in while we're talking. And so here's one. And so I think what it is then is it's drones flying in the sky to take essentially the image of what we would normally see in the way of fireworks. I think a couple things need to be known or find out. We don't want drones crashing in residential areas. And how far away is it going to be visible? If we were to put it over the top of Memorial Park, make all the drone flyers keep their drones over Memorial Park, how far away would it in fact be seen by the community? We tell everybody go outside at 9 o'clock and you'll see the drone show. how much would be visible? And I think these are strictly questions that we would ask the provider, for which, you know, I think they did in fact have some type of provider that did this one. So I'll end there. Hopefully the Director of Finance can let us know about the Council and Commission's budget.
Thank you, Councilmember Willie. Councilmember Way, you're the only person with time remaining at this point. Would you be willing, of your remaining 6 minutes, to cede over 2 minutes so that Director Alfaro can answer Councilmember Willie's question?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Way.
Give me one moment. I'm just bringing up the information on the city's financial transparency portal. So it looks like going back to fiscal year 2017-18, we had a overall for both city council and commission's budget of about $993,000, and we spent $838,000, so a little over about almost $140,000 in unspent funds there. In fiscal year 18-19, total budget of $977,779. We spent $866,580, so about $100,000 or so left over there. And in fiscal year 19-20, the budget was a little over $1 million with about $900,000 spent. So ranging from about the $100,000 to $140,000 range over the last 3 years.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Alfaro. And so, Councilmember Way, you have your hand up, and thank you for the time. You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, you're welcome, Mayor Paul. Okay, so I'm a little confused. I like your idea about this Cupertino Visitor Center. Sounds like a good, place to have, and I think it could be in a work program to study. And I'm very concerned to spend $500,000 on the show this year while we have economic, COVID difficulties, and so that's just my concern. A show is great. I like it, and as Councilmember Moore said, I'm confused about the $50,000 for the council, and for commissioners 25,000. That I don't quite get it. I guess we'll get details next time. So my concern is, with the $500,000 during this tough time, do we have the budget? Is it a good money spent? That maybe we'll have more issues on that. More reports on that. And so still, I would like to see if any council members agree with me that this traffic garden needs to be out of it, so we can just work it on the CIP and see if we really want to do it this year or not.
Okay, thank you very much, Councilmember White. May I have 30 of your seconds to respond to? Absolutely.
Anybody can have my time. I think I have to ask my question.
Thank you very much. So you're at 3:30. I'll be brief about this. So that's a great point you make. A couple of points, and with regard to the ask is that we consider it in a modification. I'm not asking for it to pass as part of the approved work plan tonight. I would like to have another visit on it for us to look at it. But to answer the substantive question, I see this as related to a particular commission, or if council sees something related to how we can emerge from the pandemic in a successful fashion, then we'll go through a process to evaluate applications and be able to say, okay, let's go ahead and support these requests. So that's how I see it. I'm just asking for an allocation. It's not something that is going to be necessarily spent in the upcoming fiscal year, but I would like to really kind of track it to the power of the purse, because council and the commissions and the public are really disconnected from the power of the purse in our city. And so I see this as a mechanism for being able to have these kind of collaborative efforts. And I think our city, through our elected officials and our appointees and the residents, we have a lot of great economic sense. And so I see that as being a mechanism for bringing forth that ability and to show that type of very positive collaborative process. So thanks very much. City Manager Fung, I'll go ahead and stop because City Manager Fung has her hand raised. Did you want to make a comment, City Manager?
I want to provide a little information, and certainly others can chime in with me. With regard to Stockholmeyer, it's already kind of in a shambles, unfortunately. So it's not going to get any worse in 2 years. It's just already in bad shape. So I wanted to provide that update. If you want a further assessment, certainly Roger has some information he can provide. It's also partially expensive to repair, not only because it's in bad shape, but it's in the flood zone along with the Blesh property. It's got some major issues. I don't want to rain on anybody's parade because I think the drone light show is super cool, but there are multiple providers other than Intel. There's no way to make it happen by this July 4th because we'd have to do an RFP. There's a lot of planning that goes into that. And of course, there's the question of the provider. I think they would provide the FAA approvals in order to fly, because if you note the article that Councilmember Willie brought up, that air show was done at an Air Force base. So there's clearance for that kind of thing. So it becomes technically difficult, but the swarm technology they use for those kinds of things is fascinating. And I definitely think that the idea of doing something that doesn't create more air pollution and fire danger, certainly during July, is a great idea. And then I would just provide a cautionary tale on any kind of COVID recovery kind of thing. In order to appropriate dollars for an effort, you really should have very specific things to be able to appropriate dollars towards an effort like that. So just a little bit of information.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. And Councilmember Moore. So there's 2 minutes left of our deliberative time. I'm just to give everyone advance notice. I'm going to add more to everyone. Once we exhaust Councilmember Way's very generously, provision time. But Councilmember Moore, you have your hand up next. But I do note that Vice Mayor Chow has her hand up as well. Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you. Especially we are before 8 o'clock. So I would consider, if you do go down the road of the drone show and you find that the height is a problem, I would just try to consider having it on two nights, and I'm wondering if what the recommendation is. If it can't happen this year, is it too late to do a fireworks show, or do we not want to do a fireworks show because of grouping people together?
Yes. The pandemic does not allow us to create gatherings of any size of that kind right now, and so in order to do a July 4th anything, right, aside from the breakfast that's being arranged with the Optimist Club as normal, the fireworks celebration or anything like that would have had to have started probably a month or two ago, and we just don't have clearance to do that kind of thing for July, unfortunately.
Okay, so maybe this is the right time to start planning for, if we are going to try to coordinate the drone show, maybe this is the right time to coordinate for next year. I'm a little concerned that it's going to be so popular and so different that we would have a lot of people coming into Cupertino to want to see it. And that's why I was kind of thinking, well, maybe you want 2 locations, do it on the 3rd and then the 4th, because some cities do their fireworks show on July 3rd. So that was the only thing I had to say about that. And I think I look forward to seeing this item come back with some more information about what the commissions and council would be doing with the funds. I think that's very interesting. With regards to the store, I personally like the store. My concern is if we are going to change our logo, that we would be purchasing merchandise that would maybe need to be changed, and perhaps it's done in, if you do start it, do it in little batches, so that you don't have a lot of merchandise on hand that would get switched. So yeah, I think it's pretty interesting ideas. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councilmember Moore. And the remainder of Councilmember Roy's time did elapse. However, I reset everyone's timers to 5 minutes. You are now at 4:40, and Vice Mayor Chow. And everyone else has a fresh 5. So Vice Mayor Chow.
Hi. So first, I'd like to know what's the cost of a normal firework show, including fire safety and prevention measures.
I can answer, Joanne can correct me if I'm wrong, but every year we spend approximately $35,000 on the fireworks show, and I think that includes, you know, support and everything. Is that about right, Joanne?
That's just for the fireworks.
Just for the fireworks?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's not insurance or, yeah.
Right.
About all the other personnel and fire prevention, I think we have.
I don't know the specifics, but I can certainly get that information.
Okay, and so for the traffic garden, I do have concern about the cost, but I have a proposal. I would like to revise that item to be a portable pop-up traffic garden that's done in-house, not hire any outside consultant, and that could be loaned to schools or any community groups to set up in their parking lot. So could we turn that into a study of this type of item? I don't think this needs a professional consultant.
Director Lee.
Yes, good evening. Roger Lee, Director of Public Works. We currently do pop-ups for our traffic garden during our various bike festivals and bike education events. It's not to any large scale, but we do that. You know, the purpose of the traffic gardens was to do something that's more permanent and better to scale as to what an actual intersection would be. And I, you know, similar to last night, really appreciate the council's feedback on this item, but we are already doing that, Vice Mayor.
Okay. But at what scale? Because I've seen pictures that pop-up garden could look really good, even with green carpet to simulate sidewalk, and then small traffic light that's portable.
Right. I mean, we're using cones and a variety of other things to simulate what it would be like, but it is a much smaller scale. But we do that now, and we'll continue to do it. We're just looking for opportunities to do, to do more.
Okay. Then another question is I think for mayor's idea, it's a great idea, but I do have concern because we are going to renovate the Torrey Avenue building. I would like to see actually if we can have a Cupertino store or a small business center or some kind of co-working space there, because I've gotten comments from people at for example, the professional women's lunch. We have a lot of moms or maybe dads who work from home, and then they have their own business while supporting family, and then they need spaces to meet with clients. And Cupertino doesn't have a lot of such kind of co-working space. So that's what I am hoping we can provide. And then, of course, the Small Business Center can provide consultants to these small businesses on loan, possible grants. Yeah, that's what I'm hoping we can enter into the discussion as we talk about the item on the new building.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Chow. You have a minute and 12 seconds left of your time. There are no hands raised. I'll go ahead and start my timer. With regard to my Cupertino prep proposal, I'd like to add that there is the component of the Mayor's Cup and being able to have collaborative space that is essentially a nonprofit public partnership in this case. And so there is the possibility of that being a prospective meeting space. And if you're talking about small business development, in every jurisdiction you go to, a chamber would intersect with that prospectively. And if you're looking for funding on a federal or state level, it would make sense if they were in proximity to each other. As for 10455 Torrey Avenue, I note that that's not actually on our work program right now. It's already in our CIP list. And so I think that's probably a follow-up discussion as to whether that makes sense to consider in terms of planning it out. Although I will note that with regard to being able to have input in that, that's baked into the CIP project description. There is council input as well as public input there. And so I also want to reiterate that the motion on the table is to ask staff to take in that input that we've provided. It is certainly significant enough to have a reordering and to bring it back to us to see whether there's something that can reflect the entirety of our visioning. With regard to the traffic garden item, I wonder whether it might not make sense to remove the item, given the fact that there might be some hesitancy. I'm fine with keeping it in there, but if there is a consensus that in order to make room for our priorities, it is something that we could take off for this next proposal, I would be willing to amend the motion on the table with regard to that. So I'm at 250 now. Let me just take a straw sense of this particular question. I won't start timers. Vice Mayor Chow.
I have a supplemental, proposing a friendly amendment. Sorry. So I'd like to propose a friendly amendment that we.
I'm sorry, to what? To the motion on the table, or to what I was just saying?
So restating your motion, what you just said, that we remove the traffic garden.
Okay, well, what's your amendment to that suggestion?
That we just removed that, but I have another amendment.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Well, let's go through. Are you supportive of removing the traffic garden item from this list? First of all,
I support that, but I have another one. I'd like to.
I understand. Let me get to you in a moment. And then with regard to, let me ask my seconder for the substitute motion. Councilmember Willie, would you be willing to remove the traffic garden item from our list? Okay. Okay. So that amendment is made. I'll go ahead and make that amendment to the motion on the table, and Councilmember Willie has seconded that. Vice Mayor Chow, your hand is raised, and you wanted to make another procedural suggestion as to the motion on the table?
Yes, another amendment. I'd like to add the CIP item for the Torrey Avenue to the council work program, so that the council can discuss the use and layout of this new building.
Okay, affirmatively. Okay. I will accept that as a friendly amendment. Because in fact, that was something that I wanted to change in the language of the CIP description. But also understanding that there is going to be a reprioritization in terms of suggestions from staff for anything we add and we don't, provide alternatives to take off. So I'll accept that as a friendly amendment. Councilmember Willie, will you accept that as a modification to add 10455 Torrey Avenue and the planning out to the next list we consider?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Chow, Vice Mayor Chow, you still have your hand up? Anything else?
Very short comment. We just removed the traffic garden, so we are adding the Torrey Avenue, which is fair.
Right. Well, we made some other amendments as well. Right? So, okay. I don't see other hands up at this point.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just provide some additional clarification on some of the suggested amendments, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yes.
So for the block leader revamp, my understanding, Vice Mayor, is that your concern is there's people that are being blocked from participating?
Is
that the concern?
Yeah.
Okay, so
I have not been active, but then each block can only have one leader.
So there's actually no limit to the block leaders that are allowed to participate. There's somebody who takes more initiative and as a lead and all their role is to ensure that a block party happens in their block. But they kind of help to coordinate that piece, but no one's limited from participating. There's not a council. I just wanted to clarify what the outcome was that we wanted, so we could solve the issue rather than creating a whole nother body that may take up a lot of coordination, having a whole other election for 6 different zones. That could be very interesting. But I think if the goal is to revamp the program so it's more inclusive, people get to participate, we encourage participation, I think that's definitely something we can do.
Yeah, I mean, my language is pretty open. It may or may not be block leaders. I don't want to make a decision that it's only about block leaders right now. Let's look at how the block leaders program works. And the issues I've heard might be just one incident. I don't know.
Right.
That's why we need to
So
start.
that the outcome could be a neighborhood council, or it could be a revamped program. I just want to clarify.
Yeah, it could be a council that's consisting of block leaders, or it could be related, but I don't know.
Well, I guess my question is, does it have to result in a council of some kind? Because I think that is the piece that's going to create this to be a much larger item. But I think we can resolve a lot of the issues that you're trying to address without developing a whole other council.
Yeah, I think here I consider neighborhood councils, and so it's just consider.
Okay, I just want to clarify what the goal outcome was.
If it doesn't make sense, maybe we just revamp the current program.
Right, to make it so that it's inclusive and encourages participation, because that's definitely what we want. So thank you. Thank you for that clarification. And then I just also wanted to point out for item 10, the recommendation to combine them all. The reason that they're separate is because there's already been direction to let's make a charter for these. Let's revise ERC. Let's do rescoping of fine arts. And so those have already been put into place, and they're actually in various departments. So if you want proper updates, having them separated out is going to be more efficient in terms of getting you the information on where it's at, how it's going. I definitely think during the commission's discussion, we can discuss those things as well, but I also don't want to hold up those other items. For example, ERC is already underway. We've met with the ERC and received input from them, and we're preparing to bring that input to council for discussion. But if we have to wait until fine arts is ready and all these other items are ready for that discussion, I just don't want them to be delayed.
Why are we having those discussions already before direction from the council?
Because council did give us direction to revise the scope of the ERC. So we're coming back for another study session with the feedback that we got from the ERC to discuss those revisions. And I think that each of these scopes warrants a full discussion. It's just some context just to put it out there. But if you would like to combine them, we can. I just want to make sure we're delivering what a quality product.
Okay, then I think to take it under advisement as to a status update. I think given the fact that the commissions and committees are there's a good purpose to taking a look at what the status is with regard to an overview perspective of what we're looking to do with each of them in the upcoming fiscal year. So I would see that as the request. It doesn't necessarily fold into it all the follow-up work to define changes to the ERC or creating a charter for the economically related.
Okay, so the combination is that when we bring forward this new commission's conversation, we give you the status on those other items. So it would still stand
be an
alone.
agenda item for a future agenda item for an update as to what the status is and the committees and commissions we're looking to.
But are they able to be their separate work items still? Because I think in terms of tracking, it's easier because different departments are handling the different topics.
Sorry, can I comment on this item? This item, consider new commission, committee, or revisit roles, has been on the council agenda since the beginning of 2019. It's there before the council gave direction about ERC. It was before council member even appointed to the ERC. This item was there before all these other items. And my understanding is the staff is pretty close in bringing this item back to the council.
Right.
So I don't understand why are we saying now this will be holding up other items. I'm very confused.
No, I don't think that item's gonna hold them up. I think if we need to have a
Just discuss
a
that.
discussion of the fine arts changes, the economic development committee review, environmental review committee. I'm saying we can definitely have that, have the status and the discussion during that item. It's about all commissions and committees really, so we can discuss any of them and potential new ones. I just want to keep the other work program items as they are so that we can continue to work towards those end goals.
This is not a new item. This is an item that was on 2019 work program, on 2020 work program. My understanding is it's supposed to be done this year, but then it will be delayed, but it's almost done.
Correct. I'm saying that for the transparency of having these other items, we can still have that discussion during this item is fine, but having the line item for ERC or the line item for the fine arts or economic development environmental review is helpful for us.
I'm sorry, I hate to cut you off in this, but Councilmember Vice Mayor Chow, you did reach the end of your time about a minute ago, and I ceded over a minute of my remaining time, but we do have a hand raised from Councilmember Moore. I wanted to call on her. So Councilmember Moore.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I do appreciate what Katie's done here with the dividing of these, the different commissions and the charter issues. I think that the economic development one is something that can take a good bit of discussion, and I think we should probably and definitely want to have the city manager involved with looking at what our economic development director does and their interaction with the committee, who's going to be on the committee, what other cities around us are doing, and again, kind of a best practices exploration with that. So my real question is, what is the motion? Because with regards to having these separate commissions and committees, I think that Katie did a great job dividing these ones up. So I'm interested in what the entire motion is that we've got on the table right now.
I knew you would ask that. So let me go ahead and run through it. Councilmember Chow, if you would, okay, well, let me start with my contributions to it. They have to do with Cupertino Prep program proposal. And I placed that up. If you need to take another look at it briefly, I'll go ahead and share my screen here. With regard to the other item of allocation, I was asking that we look to allocate $100,000 for the Mayor's Cup, and to combine that with a collaborative space with the Chamber of Commerce as well as the Cupertino store. There were the suggestions from Vice Mayor Chow. And so Vice Mayor Chow, if you could please share your screen with regard to items number, I believe it was, 15 and 26. Revamping the Block Leader and Neighborhood Watch program, encouraging dark sky compliance. And then also in my original motion, I had asked for the omnibus update on what we're looking to do with the commissions and committees. It is not something that would effectuate all of the direction, but at least we would have a stop within the work plan where staff would come to us and give us and the public a high-level perspective of how those mechanisms for outreach and decision-making in our city are being affected. There was 10455 Torrey Avenue that was added as part of the work plan proposal being requested as part of this motion. And there was a request to remove the traffic garden from items that move forward. I believe that is all of the items with regard to changes from the staff proposal. If there's anything else, please feel free to add. But my understanding of the motion on the table was those items.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. I have two questions. One, with regards to the Torrey Avenue layout, I'm not sure if the original request to have it be leased to the public for for some kind of incubator space if that is still in there. And I am concerned about the removal of the traffic garden, given that we have so many trails, bike trails and all in the city. I thought it was kind of an interesting request to have some city materials for the traffic garden for a movable one. I know we have the sign shop, which is certainly capable of providing things. But overall, I felt that the traffic garden needs to be, well, it could be coordinated with CUSD. And maybe that is probably the better location for that type of a project. Anyway, so going back to Torrey Avenue, the reason why I ask is I personally am opposed to leasing out public space. So I just want to make sure that that is not what we're considering doing there, because we have so much office space which is currently vacant within the city. So I want to understand that a little bit more.
Right. So as the maker of the motion and the acceptor of the friendly amendment on that, my understanding of the friendly amendment was to place consideration of the layout on our work plan for 10455 Torrey Avenue. And so there is no endorsement of any particular programmatic element. I believe that your concern with regard to having workplace or workspace available to the public has now been registered twice in this meeting. But my understanding of the friendly amendment was not that we were trying to define particular programmatic elements. Rather, it was a request to have council consider it and be part of a public process to discuss what goes in there. Councilmember Willie, was that also your understanding of this modification to the amendment?
Very close, and so close enough, yes.
Okay.
Mayor Paul, also with regards to the items which you added in the financial ask, you talked about this coming back to us and having some public discussion, so if we were to call the question and have an approval on this, what exactly does that mean with regards to how we would have this public discussion? Because it seems almost as though we are approving the work program in its entirety with your new alteration. So how does that work?
Well, like I've stated, I don't envision this as a motion to approve a work plan in addition to particular items. I think that it is a motion to come back to us with an iteration similar to this one, and take in the input and feedback that has been described in the motion, because this is actually the first time we've had the opportunity to take a look at a consolidated whole of suggested items that we put into the work plan as staff, takes a first crack at it. And so I would like council to take that crack at it here, and then we go back and with regard to lodging opinions with regard in terms of, for example, 10455 Torrey Avenue programming. I view that as it's good and important, but it's probably 2 meetings ahead of time, because we haven't actually placed it on a work program. It would be in a future meeting such as this one if there's a motion to adopt a work program, and then once that item comes back, we would be talking about what we would like to see as part of the programmatic elements. So with regard to the ask, in terms of the Cupertino proposal that I have, it's really just a matter of placing it on an agenda for discussion and opening up the public to come in to, get a sense of what the public believes is the advisability or, the input with regard to this idea. I fully acknowledge that this is an idea that hasn't had the benefit of members of the public looking at it and thinking about it. And so I fully see this, and hopefully it's clear this time. I see this not as an approval of the work plan for the upcoming fiscal year. I see this as a motion asking staff to go back and modify this proposal and bring it back to us, consolidated with all of this input.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I personally would like to call the question on this item.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And as a point of procedure, Vice Mayor Chow very correctly pointed out to me following yesterday, well, yeah, it is yesterday's meeting now, that once a question is called, we need a second. Would anyone like to second calling the question? I'll go by show of hands. I'm not sure if Vice Mayor Chow has her hand up to second that. But Vice Mayor Chow, do you have your hand up to second that? I'll go ahead and second it. Okay. And so the way that calling the question and requiring a vote works is that you need a 2/3 majority per Rosenberg's rules, which we've adopted. 2/3 of 5 is more than 3, and so we'll need 4 people to vote affirmatively in order to end discussion and call a vote on the substitute motion that's on the table. And so, Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call vote for the motion to call the question?
Councilmember Moore?
Aye.
Councilmember Way?
Aye.
Councilmember Willie?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow? You're muted, Vice Mayor.
Nay.
Mayor Paul?
Nay.
So the motion fails with Chow and Paul voting no.
Okay, so the reason I voted nay is that I did see Vice Mayor Chow had her hand up. I wanted to provide an opportunity to make a point. I do see that our city manager also has her hand up. But Madam City Manager, did you have a point of clarification or something else?
I can wait for council to go through their process a little bit more. I just wanted to remind council that in order for us to incorporate the work program into the budget for this year, you actually have to adopt the work program at the latest the end of May. Okay. So I'm just saying.
Okay, thank you for keeping us on track with regard to the timing requirements. That's very valuable. Vice Mayor Chow, you did have your hand up before the vote to call the question was made, and so I will call on you first, and then Councilmember Way.
Okay, so I was going to make 2 points. First, I think like I said, the proposal to reconsider commission and committees was made a long time ago, but then we keep adding new items. We are specific commission were considered even a bike pad. And I mean, this is very frustrating. First, when we considered that, we were thinking we want more community engagement, we want transportation, and now other items get in the way, and now we are saying, oh, they should be considered first. I think that shouldn't be the process we do, that all the new items gets considered first. This item has been on the council agenda for 2 years. Let's have a council discussion finally about revisiting the roles of our current existing commission and then move forward. I think that should be the process. That's first. Second, I did propose to not remove traffic garden, but just replace it with better portable pop-ups that can be loaned to different school sites. I think that's actually will serve more purposes than one single site. Everyone have to travel to there, to ship their kids there to even bike. That's not many people have that ability to even have a carrier for bikes. So I think the pop-up garden is more usable, but the staff says we already have that capability. So that's why it was proposed then to remove that. And the third item is the reason, I think these 2 comments really are not that important. If I don't make them, it's fine. But I voted nay for the call for question because I kind of feel it feels like we are trying to cut people off, and I see that how Councilmember Wei had her hand up at that time. I had my hand up at that time, and the city manager had her hand up. I feel
Vice Mayor, I'm sorry, I need to interrupt you. I had ceded my remaining time over to you, and that has been exhausted. Councilmember Moore has 2.5 minutes, Councilmember Way has 5, and Councilmember Willie has 5. Would any of the remaining council members with time be willing to cede time to Vice Mayor Chow?
Yes, I will.
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Willie and Vice Mayor Chow. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Councilmember Way, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. So I think to follow up with Vice Mayor Chow's points, the items we take off now doesn't mean it's not going to come back next time. We need to limit our items so that the staff can literally and practically finish it. So, with Traffic Garden, if next year we think that's important, we can always bring it back. That's why I think it's a low priority and we're not sure what to do. That's why I proposed let's take it off. So the whole point is let's concentrate what we want to do, and then so that the staff literally have time to finish it. Else we're gonna keep on postponing 21, 22 to 22, 23. Like Vice Mayor Charles, to add her point, it was 2019 and it's something just got into it. So what I was trying to do is to actually delete some items. Doesn't mean we're not going to do it. I think this work item is for 21, 22. Let's concentrate on the important things. And and one more I want to clarify is I think I got clarification from Mayor Paul. This is to instruct the staff to come back next time so we can have discussions and then we can approve the city work plan. And the third is, I think, Mayor Paul, when you mentioned all the friendly amendments, you didn't mention the Stockmeyer House, which is on Vice Mayor Charles' list. So I'm a little confused. Is that in or out?
Okay, so this is what happened with the Stockmeyer House request. Councilmember Moore had asked for information on it, and staff did provide verbal information during the meeting. But yes, that was part of the motion. That was part of the substitute motion to come back with an informational update on the Stockmeyer House status.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Way. You have 3 minutes left, and Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. The status, well, you're pretty much given a status update, is that it's in a really bad state and that it can sit around with nothing happening to it for another couple of years.
Okay, well, if you're satisfied with that status update and you didn't necessarily want a written deliverable, then I think that should suffice if you're the person asking for that follow-up information. So at this point, I don't have any further hands raised. Councilmember Willie or Councilmember Moore, Councilmember Wade, can I have half a minute of your time just to make a final comment to follow up on one item?
Absolutely. I'm just going to raise my hand so I can see my time to anybody. After Councilmember Moore says, should we just, somebody make a friendly amendment, just take it off? The Stockmeyer.
I think because Councilmember Moore was asking for it, if she doesn't follow up with it, then ultimately that's considered information already provided. So with regard to the pop-ups, it does sound like we have a robust mechanism for that. I wouldn't mind at all getting a 15-minute update from staff, getting a sense of what we do for these events. I don't think that it needs to be placed on a work plan, but it's just a suggestion with regard to, the idea of encouraging this type of outreach to the community. So that's just a comment. So thanks very much for that extra time. I don't see, Councilmember Willie, you have your hand up. Oh, and
I would just make the comment, I'm very pleased with Roger stepping forward and letting us know about his pop-up that he has. I'd be interested in asking him to tell us how he would further improve what he has to do a better job. Is he happy with it? Nothing else needed? Or does he need some more ground things for lines, for separation? Maybe some styrofoam curbs and gutters? How could he make it better and come back to us at that update and say, if I had $20,000, I would buy these different things and make that much nicer. and we could then decide what might be next. So,
Okay, great. Did you want Director Lee to speak to that, Councilmember Willie?
yeah, I mean, if he is able to tonight, otherwise, just knowing that, you know, I'm for empowering him to take and build on what he has.
Thank you, Councilmember Willie. You know, we're trying to just make it a little bit more realistic, and that's been the information that I've received from our Safe Route to School coordinator. Is the more realistic, the better for the education. I don't if David Stillman, our transportation manager, is in, he could probably provide some more detail. You have things to add to that, David?
Yeah, sure. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. David Stillman, Transportation Manager. And thank you for the question, Councilmember Willie, and thank you, Roger. Yeah, currently we have pop-ups, or before COVID, we would have these pop-up traffic gardens, if you will, at our annual bike fests, which you all are probably familiar with, that we held every fall at City Hall in the parking lot. We would set up what's basically a pop-up traffic garden that would be with cones and some plywood, small building facades to kind of simulate some houses and businesses, and a few stop signs. And we would take small kids around and just kind of show them how to interact on a street, what the stop signs mean, to look out for cars backing up, that kind of thing. And we would do a similar kind of setup occasionally at individual schools. The issues with the pop-ups are that they take time to set up, they take time to tear down, they cost a few $1,000s each time, and because of the smallish scale of the pop-ups, they're not able to very accurately portray a real street network and the real challenges that kids biking or walking would be expected to have to manage out in the real world. And you can do things to make the pop-up seem a little bit more realistic, as you indicated. And it's just a matter of how much time and energy you want to put into setting up and taking down, and how much time and money you want to devote to that. And at some point, it would be helpful to have a permanent installation. But that's kind of what we do now, and the reason why we'd be looking at having a permanent setup. Also, with a permanent setup, people could use it at any time if they wanted to take their kids and kind of show them how to navigate streets, and it wouldn't be dependent upon the city hiring a contractor or having staff go out and do a setup.
Okay, thanks. And your time is at 1 minute, Councilmember Willie. I see Vice Mayor Chow has her hand up, and Councilmember Wei has ceded her time. So Vice Mayor Chow.
Thank you so much. So here is a picture of a potential pop-up garden. As you can see, duct tape. It should be easy to install and pretty realistic and cute. And this one is a picture of potential easier, cheaper traffic garden reusing existing parking space. I think this one cost $75,000. The cost we used to just study the problem. So I would like, if the staff would think this is something we would like to do in the future, I think we need more information, exactly what's the cost estimate, what we are thinking of. And just some pavement on the ground would already make a traffic garden, but are we thinking something expensive? Is that really necessary? Then I think, yeah, $75,000 to study something. Are we expecting something that would cost $3 million? And then we probably should know that before we go ahead and study. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow. Seeing no other hands. I'm just gonna make one final comment and start Councilmember Wei's clock again. I'm not asking to make an amendment. I just want to make a comment. I think it's been really great with regard to being able to have this ability to meet by video conference. When we get back to live meetings, it would be really great to be able to share our screens and to have a computer, for us, because, when we're trying to effectuate these motions, I think you can really see the utility of being able to share the verbiage of it, but also media. So that's just my comment. Okay. So Vice Mayor Chow, you have your hand up.
Oh, no.
Oh, so, okay. I don't see any other hands up at this point. We don't need a motion to call a question. I will go ahead and request that the city clerk take a roll call vote on the substitute motion that's on the table.
Councilmember Moore,
Aye.
Councilmember Way,
Aye.
Councilmember Willie,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Chow,
Aye.
Mayor Paul.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. You know, I apologize for any inefficiencies that are being ironed out. But I think that it's fair to say that everyone's doing this with the best of intentions, and I thank you. And I thank you for the spirit of cooperativity. I bid you a good night. This is the second meeting night in a row. And so I think we will be reconvening our next special meeting, I believe a week from yesterday, on the 11th. And our next regular meeting is going to be on the 18th of May. So again, thank you very much. And I bid you all a great night.
Good night.
Aye.